Brilliance Audio.
Through the Banks of the Red Cedar, My Father and the Team That Changed the Game, by Maya Washington, performed by the author. We have a passing to note tonight. A star of sports and later the movies, Bubba Smith, born Charles Aaron Smith in Beaumont, Texas, the 6'7" defensive standout for the Raiders, Oilers, and Colts. He went on to act in the Police Academy movies. Bubba Smith was 66. Diane Sawyer, ABC World News Tonight. My dad hopped a flight as soon as the funeral arrangements were made. It would have been nice if he'd flown into LAX instead of Ontario Airport, I thought, as the two of us started off onto the 57 freeway just before rush hour to pay our final respects to his childhood friend, Charles Aaron Bubba Smith, in Los Angeles. Fortunately, my mom's first cousin Benny was retired and lived in nearby Pomona. He met my dad at the airport, and they enjoyed some time together at Benny's home until I could get off work in Los Angeles. Then, in his early 70s, Benny had been a second father to me most of my adult life. Watching Benny age seemingly overnight had strangely prepared me for the life chapter my actual father was slowly creeping toward. The chapter where you attend more retirements than graduations and more funerals than birthday parties. Considering the circumstances that brought him to town in the first place, I did my best to remind myself that being stuck in traffic with my dad, who I hadn't seen in months and who was still alive at 66, wasn't the worst thing in the world, even if he was determined to point out the obvious in that way that dads do. Ah, shucks, traffic. How do people drive like this every day? Look at all these cars, he declared from my passenger seat. I wanted to remind him that he could have flown into LAX, but I didn't. I took a deep breath and said, "Yep, it's always like this." "So, how was your day, Coach? Busy day?" He settled in, making small talk as he adjusted the air vent. Before I could answer, his flip phone began to buzz. He fumbled it to his ear. "Hello?" he answered. After a brief moment, he sang with the familiar cadence and tone he uses when giving speeches, or, in this case, talking to what I assumed was a reporter. "Bubba was definitely a game changer as a defensive end. You didn't see guys with his size and quickness coming off the defensive line," he trailed. Isn't it enough that his childhood friend just died? Now he has to take calls from reporters about it? I thought, daydreaming my way through the slow crawl as the smoggy LA skyline came into view. His football career was over before I was born, but moments like these were always a reminder of his celebrity and that of his friends. My dad retired from 3M Corporation after a long career as a pioneer in diversity recruiting at the end of 2010, on the heels of being named one of the 50 greatest Minnesota Vikings of all time. His business colleagues and even some of his famous former teammates, like Minnesota Supreme Court Justice Alan Page, defensive tackle, and former UC Berkeley head football coach Joe Kapp, quarterback, gave their remarks at one of his 2 epic retirement parties. I learned so much that I hadn't known about my dad through the speakers who took the podium. It took 11 people to replace him in his role at 3M and about 20 to cover all the different aspects of his professional life in sports, business, and community service in each retirement party program. My favorite moments were when countless mentees and protégés expressed the ways that my dad impacted their careers and lives. I got my first job. I got a PhD, and even I met my future spouse because of Gene Washington. Admittedly, it was hard not to ear dip in his conversation with the reporter. Every school around the country wanted Bubba. They were all trying to recruit him. He and his father put in a good word for me to go to Michigan State. Without that, I never would have made it because of the segregation, he concluded, wrapping up the interview from my passenger seat. He finished the call just as we exited onto La Cienega. We drove deeper into South LA and passed a familiar Target store on La Cienega and Rodeo. "Bubba lived over here, Dad?" Do you know how many times I've cut through Baldwin Hills to get to USC to avoid traffic? I could have been walking through the Target parking lot as he passed in his car on the way home, and I didn't even know it. I stammered in disbelief as we pulled up to Bubba's unassuming home.